Well, I was kind of thrilled to hear that. The only thing I knew about it was Edwin Newman did a thing, on camera, on a cassette, a VCR or something, and was explaining that the first bulletin was made by Don Pardo, but they didn't record it.
That's right.
I don't know whether somebody goofed or I don't know what the heck the situation was. How did it sound?
Well, let me go back a little bit if you have a moment. Firstly, I happened to be at home at the time.
Yeah.
And I was recording another program at the time.
Right.
And that's the only reason. It was very fortuitous. I just happened to be there. My interest had always been taping television, which very few people ever really considered as something to do. I did it because it was the only way I could preserve programming that I preferred to listen to again, since I couldn't watch it again.
Yeah.
When you came on the air, and I've researched this now, so I know specific dates and times. It was 1:45:03. It was a local bulletin, and they had the place card, the NBC place card, because at that time NBC did not have a hot camera, and it took about 15 minutes to get a camera going.
Yeah.
So it was voice over the place card, and it was the local New York City bulletin. Then, a few minutes later, you came on again with a second bulletin that went national. And I have these two bulletins. And then I subsequently continued to record, and now I realize in retrospect that NBC, when they were ready to lay everything down on their tape or quad, they started about 4 minutes into the actual broadcast.
Yeah.
So those first minutes and your bulletins were never, ever recorded.
That's right.
And to date, I have never found any example of that material with the exception of what I did.
Yeah.
So I found it to be remarkable because that particular incident is remembered by all of us. And that was really a breakthrough in television reporting.
Yeah.
And you started that all with those first moments.
Yeah, well, I had the bulletin, and then I remember they grabbed a hold of Bill Ryan, who was the local reporter, and they brought him up and put him in the hot seat. I was glad to get the hell out of there, because it was hectic.
Did you think you would be on the air at first? I mean, doing any of the reporting?
No, I didn't do anything after that, after the initial bulletins.
No, but did you feel you might be called into duty because of the immediacy of it all?
No, well, that wasn't my job, We did the bulletin, as announcers, and I guess they would have eventually put in a commentator in there, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like a John Chancellor or a Frank McGee, and that's what they did take over, as a matter of fact, is they all got alerted to come in, to assign them to it. But I was just there, and they were just ripping off the sheets off the AP wires, and it was difficult to read and everything else, It was all jumbled up.
Do you remember those first feelings when you first were handed those bulletins?
I remember now, I'm taken back now about it back in 63. I remember how shook up I was, it's a shock to when the president is shot,
Absolutely.
And you don't know what the heck's going on.
Did you ever try to find out if these bulletins existed? Did you ever make a search yourself?
No, I never did. I just let it go at that because when Edwin Newman got on camera, this is a later time when they talked about it, know?
When was that? Do you remember?
No, I think I have I don't know where I caught it, but I must have probably on a VCR or something.
All right, so Edwin Newman
mentions, they're kind of reviewing about it, and he mentions that Don Pardo was the staff announcer who actually broke in, and he gave some explanation as to why it wasn't heard. And then when Bill Ryan and everybody else took over, that was it. So he just was explaining that the very first voice that gave the bulletin was not heard on the air. That was not heard in a recording, you know what I mean?
It was never recorded, yes.
So that was it.
This only exists now with the Library of Congress. I mentioned in my letter, I did send them a copy.
Quite a nice letter you received.
I did. They have been very receptive, and they were very appreciative.
Yeah.
And I was very happy to do that. I, for so many years, have kept this basically to myself, and it was just time to share it. And I certainly have been wanting to contact you for years, but I've just always put it off. And I realize now, I remember reading you just had, and congratulations, your 80th birthday. I thought, well, gee, I have to give you this. This is something that's history.
Well, you're very nice to do that.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I...
My 5 children will be thrilled.
Oh, I'm sure. And I can't believe it's been almost 35 years ago that I was sitting in front of that TV.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that NBC bulletin comes on and your voice, and it began with a lot of anxiety and who knew what was going to happen, and I just stayed with it. And it was, the whole country was mesmerized.
Oh, you've really got all of something there.
Any anecdotes regarding that moment, and any little retrospective about that particular day?
No, on the bulletin.
On the bulletins, yes.
I was almost in shock. You just didn't believe it. You were frightened, actually. Thinking like the world is coming to an end.
And after those first 2 bulletins, did you do any more commentating at all, or that was it?
No, that was it. I just did bulletins, and the newsmen came in. Frank McGee, and a host of them. As the day went on, everybody was coming.
Well, I think you'll listen
the commentator was coming in out of the woodwork.
Chet Huntley joined
the whole gang. They literally took over as the day went on.
Well, I know now that NBC taped 71 and a half hours of coverage.
Yeah.
They have 71 and a half hours archived.
Well, you probably have everything.
But they do not have those first 3 minutes and 52 seconds, and they do not have your first 2 bulletins.
Yeah.
So that to me was a missing link, which I always felt very privileged to have been where I was and to be able to record it for posterity.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that I'm going to be able to now give this to you.
I'm in the throes. My daughter is a PhD at the University of Arizona in Tucson, and she wants me to write a book, because I've been here at NBC now. It'll be 54 years.
I think it's a great idea.
In June. I came here before television, and then I could write about it. I remember doing a Yankee game, 4.5 innings of baseball.
Really?
In 1946.
Wow.
Imagine it. So they sent me out with a mobile unit, nobody knew what was going on. There were only 60 television sets in New York at the time. I didn't want to do it.
Incredible.
I was assigned to do it, so they sent me to Yankee Stadium, and I did 4.5 innings with Bob Stanton. He was the sportsman here at NBC. And I did 4.5 innings. The Yankees at the Yankee Stadium. Then a couple of weeks later, they sent me to the Polo Grounds to do a Giant game. And then later on, they sent me to Ebbets Field to do a Brooklyn game,
Did that seem
experimental?
That you could have been the pre-Mel Allen of television.
Yeah, well, I did it before Mel Allen got, but I never wanted to do it because I loved Mel Allen, and I met him a few times, and I knew him fairly well. But later on, because I was a big fan of Mel Allen's in radio,
Right.
And that's how they assigned me, here at NBC. The supervisor one day said, "Hey, do you know anything about baseball?" And I said, Sure, like I knew it all,
Isn't it amazing how helter-skelter things were in those days, where you were really sent wherever the breaking story was or wherever they had a need for a particular announcer, and there you were.
Yeah. So this is the way they assigned me to it, and I didn't want to do it because who the hell cares? There's only 60 television people that's going to hear me. What's it going to do for my career? I just came up. I came up here in 1944.
Wow.
Rhode Island.
In downtown Dallas, President Kennedy was shot today just as his motorcade left downtown Dallas. Mrs. Kennedy jumped up and grabbed Mr. Kennedy. She cried, "Oh no." The motorcade sped on. A photographer said he saw blood on the president's head. It was believed 2 shots were fired. Keep tuned to your NBC station for the later news.
NBC Newsroom in New York. President Kennedy and Governor John Connally of Texas have been cut down by assassins' bullets in downtown Dallas. We'll repeat that. President Kennedy and Governor John Connally of Texas have been cut down by assassins' bullets in downtown Dallas. They were riding in an open automobile when the shots were fired. The president, his limp body cradled in the arms of his wife, Jacqueline, had been rushed to Parkland Hospital. Flint Hill, a Secret Service agent assigned to Mrs. Kennedy, said he's dead as the president was lifted from the rear of a White House touring car, the famous bubble top from Washington. He was rushed to an emergency room in the hospital. Other White House officials were in doubt as the corridors of the hospital erupted in pandemonium. The incident occurred just east of the triple underpass facing a park in downtown Dallas. Reporters about 5 car lengths behind the chief executive were behind the autocade. Stay tuned to your NBC station for the later news.